Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Aussies taking over the NBA podcast. It's Wednesday the 25th of April 2018 and we got a special Anzac Day edition of the pod for you. I'm Benjamin Black and I'm joined as always with my man Andy Bullock. We're going to take a look back at the playoff action in both the East and the West, having just watched Philly close it out against Miami. As we record this pod, Patty Mills' Spurs are fighting to stay in the series against Golden State Warriors. It's currently down 10 and it's just the start of the second quarter. Got a lot to cover today, including the return of playoff Thon Maker, 11 blocks off the bench for the Bucks in games 3 and 4. In combination with Delly, they've brought the Boston series back to 2-2, heading back to Boston. This morning, Baines' Celtics have held on to Game 5 at home, which means the series is going to go back to Milwaukee again for Game 6, 3-2 in favour of Boston. We'll discuss Patty Mills' impressive performance to keep the Spurs' hopes alive as they fight to stay in the playoffs. Jingling Joe Ingles is heating things up in the Western Conference shootout with OKC. 2 important performances with his wingman Dante Exum. Finally, we're going to discuss Ben Simmons as he continues his magical run with the Philly 76ers into the conference semi-finals, where we'll be joined by more Australians coming out of the Celtics and Bucks series. Also, finally, we've got some big news at home. Andrew Bogut has signed for the Sydney Kings, calling time for now on his NBA career, while the NBA loses a veteran Aussie, a player who has had a distinguished career, including a championship with the Golden State Warriors. The NBL has picked up a quality big man who still has plenty more to give back to the Kings, and we're going to enjoy watching him play for the Kings this season. Right now, we're going to get into the action.
All right, game 1 is game 4 of the series. Spurs playing Warriors. That was in San Antonio, and they had to win this one to keep alive.
The Spurs came out swinging. They didn't want to go down.
No. I mean, they did have Clay, I think, shot 12 that night and did have an off night. And it seems when he's hitting, then they're winning. But Paddy had a good run on that game.
Yeah, I think he played 36 minutes. He had 3 from 8 and 3 from 7 from downtown. I think all of his buckets came from downtown. And he had 5 assists, which was pretty good too.
Yeah, definitely running more of the offense in that game. Tony Parker not getting a lot of minutes.
And I think he was plus 21 on the night, which shows when he's on the court, he was doing things.
Yeah, it's just one of the things. I mean, we called a series whitewash, but Golden State had a terrible night.
Yeah, they shot. There's not many nights that they're going to shoot 38% from the field and 25% from 3. So I mean,
you're not going to win any games, especially in the playoffs, shooting like that. But game 5 today, you'd expect Golden State to win this at home.
Yeah, close it out at home in front of their home fans. Yeah.
But Paddy played well. I think that's a good end to the season for him. His probably last performance, not getting a lot of minutes to go. They're running with Tony Parker a lot, which is I don't know why, to be honest with you. He hasn't really shot very well. It's a bit woeful in that factor. I mean, he hasn't played any minutes all year, and
he's coming off that quad injury, so I think he's in there for a bit more of experience. They've played Javante Murray at the point a little bit more, and I mean, he's only a rookie. I'm pretty sure he's in his first year, so getting as many minutes out as they can from Patty Mills, is kind of he's the veteran of their team, and I mean, if he's the veteran of your team, he's not a top tier point guard.
No, he's probably better playing off the shoot rather than at the point.
Yeah,
especially you're quite a physical playoff series.
And without Kawhi Leonard as well, who's another one of their ball handlers, they kind of lose a lot of their offense. Not just scoring off the dribble and not just creating for himself, but creating for the rest of the team as their primary ball handler. So they did a little bit less sort of dumping into LaMarcus Aldridge, and they got a little bit more out of Rudy Gay, which is keeps their hopes alive. Unfortunately, Rudy Gay hasn't really come up big in this series, which was one of the ways pretty much that they had to get some decent scoring out of Rudy Gay. Otherwise, if it's just LaMarcus, and that's about it.
It's the LaMarcus show. If he's having a good night, they get close. If he's having off, then you got to rely on your outside shooting from 41-year-old Manu Ginobili, and then
And you're going to get a depreciating game from Ginobili. I mean, you'll get 5 or 6 good minutes, And, I mean, he closed that game pretty well. He hit a couple of big shots.
Yeah.
And
but again, it's one of those things. It's a bit of a dad's army team.
I mean, it's similar to Dwayne Wade in that Philly series where you can't really rely on him to score.
But at least he won one game for them.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's one game, and you'd be pretty happy with that if Dwayne Wade was your
Pulled
guy.
a game out. Yeah. If you're going to him off the bench, Dragic didn't have a really good series at all. I mean, he still pulled out some points, but it didn't really run the show.
But I mean, as the Spurs sort of wind down to the end of their season, they're coming to a bit of a crossroads with some of their older players as well. And I mean,
there's a lot of talk of Kawhi going to the Lakers. He's not happy at San Antonio.
Which would be very interesting because Patty Mills, I think, is on a $12 million a year deal.
Yeah, he's on until 2021. I think got 5 years.
And he's a serviceable point guard. He can be a first team point guard, but I mean, they're going to have to rearrange their pieces around him if he's going to play.
They're going to have to get some stronger guys in the shoot and
catch and shoot, some better guards for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Golden State does get up this game. Playing the Pelicans, coming off 47 points for Anthony Davis.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Come on, yeah.
How far can Steph Curry get back?
Yeah, I don't know how long they can delay that because I don't think they really have anyone to guard Anthony Davis and lock him down. So I wonder if you just let him score and then try and tie up Drew Holiday and Rondo and hope for the best. But I mean, it's Golden State. They've been in that situation before.
Yeah.
They're a veteran team and they're going into their fourth year where they're looking to make the finals. So I'm sure they'll make a
series of it, but it'd be they made easy work of a Portland you'd think would take them to somewhat of a distance in the series. But the real reason why he kind of came in today was Milwaukee Celtics fucking Thon Maker.
The return of playoff Thon Maker.
Comes out of nowhere to have the game of his career.
Yeah, he came off the bench and in 4 minutes he had 5 blocks. Just crazy stuff. I've watched that about 3 or 4 times.
It was the craziest 5 to 8 minutes of basketball, you know. I think he got 14. He sung 14 that game as well.
Yeah, he was hitting threes. I mean, he had a 3 he hit over Baines. Look, he was battling Baines a little bit sort of down the stretch of that game, and They both went to the floor. They had a scuffle and went to the floor, and then coming back down the court, he hits a 3 pretty much over Baines and did a sort of money celebration in his face. A bit of Aussie on Aussie crime.
Aussie fighting.
Yeah, a bit of Aussie on Aussie crime. But yeah, Delly came off the bench as well, and mate, he injected a bit of life into their offense.
Yeah, they didn't rely on Giannis too much game 3 and game 4. But it looked more of a team. It didn't look like, let's just hoik the ball up to Giannis and hope that, he backs down someone or plays around the post and gets it in. He's not an outside shooter in any sense. So it looked more like there was a bit more distribution from Delly. Delly got a lot more minutes. Middleton was shooting well.
Yeah, Middleton's played pretty well in that series.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jabari Parker actually has put up some good...
Yeah, he's given them some good minutes off the bench.
So more depth in team, but the Thonatron just
quality. I mean,
that block, he pretty much just blocked and grabbed the ball.
Yeah, that was quality.
Steal.
On what's his name? Greg Monroe. On Monroe.
Yeah.
I mean, Monroe's a veteran player, and Thon's in his 3rd year, and he wasn't backing down at all.
That's how he has to play every night. If he plays like that every night, he's a good player. I mean, I'd still play him more of a guard than a center. I don't think he's quick or big enough to be a good center.
He was defending the switches really well, which was really interesting. That they didn't go to that earlier in the series. I don't know why he wasn't coming off the bench already. I mean, he didn't have the great season, and coming in off the bench 2 down in the 3rd game at home. The lift that he gave him was huge, and he got the crowd into it. He was blocking shots, winding the crowd up, getting them right into it, and it almost created a bit of a situation.
They fed off that.
They fed off that, but it almost looked like the Celtics were a little bit scared, not scared, but it awed them a little bit because they went scoreless for 12 minutes, like 9 minutes of the first half, and then 2 minutes into the second quarter. 9 minutes into the first quarter and 2 minutes into the second quarter, they were scoreless. They only scored from the free throw line. And
when you're coming down the field and he's blocking every layup, and everything inside the paint.
Not necessarily just the highlight plays. I mean, they were switching. They were running defensive schemes that were putting the Celtics offense on the back foot because he was able to switch around, and it wasn't just the defense getting set playing 1-on-1. He was able to direct. He was switch. He was calling switches and telling people to move, pointing, like revving people up. And I mean, you want that in your team from someone coming off the bench. He didn't play at all in the first 2 games, so you want him coming off the bench with a chip on his shoulder and wanting to play. Like
there was a bit more life.
Yeah, you don't want him coming into the game thinking, oh, well, I haven't got any minutes. I'll just come out there and try and do my best. Like he came out there with a point to prove. He had a purpose. I don't know if that was intended by Joe Prunty, but
I don't know. Maybe you got a good rev up for but it was one of those things. It was good to see. It was good for Milwaukee. I think that drove them to that game. Definitely the Thonatron drove them to win that game. That was a game-winning performance,
for sure.
quite easily. And in game 4 of that series, Delly with the cheeky steal and floater to the buzzer beater.
Yeah, a really good buzzer beater right at the end of the first quarter. I mean, that was a crazy rollout from Marcus Morris. I mean, I don't know what he was doing, and
he's a brain fart.
Yeah, he's a cheeky player, Delly, but you can't be doing that.
He's a grubby player. He's typical Australian, just grub.
And I think
he's a pest.
That's part of playoff basketball as well too. I mean, you've got to do everything you can. I mean, people say that you can cross the line and you can be a dirty player, but you've got to do everything you can in playoff basketball.
It's not regular season. We're not just trying to get through 82 games to get somewhere. You can have an off night regular season and come back and play brilliantly for 5 games. So you have to be scrappy. It's been a very scrappy playoff series. The only team that's looked really like a fluid motion has been the Pelicans.
Yeah.
Even the Philly Miami series has been extremely scrappy, physical, and just low shooting.
Yeah. Teams trying to limit the other team as opposed to both teams going at it, playing the best basketball they can.
Well, they're all in the bonus 4 minutes into the quarter. It's just, you can just tell there's 4 fouls in an offensive set, and they're more than happy for teams to go to the line as opposed to maybe laying off them a bit more, but it's very, very scrappy.
I think that Milwaukee series has become quite scrappy in the first 2 games. I think the Bucks were sort of searching for offense in those first 2 games.
They were searching for Giannis. They were searching for someone. They were searching for a one-man team. They were just let's hook it to Giannis and hope for the best. Whereas they've gone outside. Jabari Park has been playing fantastic minutes for them.
Yep.
Middleton, Snell, these guys are hitting, regularly, and they're getting, I think the first game they scored 113. Second game,
the first game was overtime. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had a chance there, but I think it would have been a different series had they won that first game after overtime, because it wasn't until in that third game, like after the second game was quite demoralizing. It wasn't until after the third game, or after about 6 minutes of the third game, that Thon came off the bench and got the crowd into it.
Yeah.
And suddenly
it lifts.
Well, suddenly you could see that they had a different piece off the bench. Oh, I can bring this guy in off the bench and he can do certain things. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily start him, and I don't think they started him today when they lost today. No, but
flip side of that, today he didn't do an awful lot.
No, and
neither did Delly really. But it was a close game. It was a tit for tat game, very scrappy, and hard to get shots off. But I mean, Baines coming off the bench. I think he started the first 4 games coming off the bench today. Yeah. That dunk Giannis had over him.
Oh, that was large, very large.
Yeah.
But the good part about it is, I mean, he defends with his body and it doesn't seem to really bother him. I mean, he's got quite quick feet. He's got pretty good hands for a big man, but he still tries to put his hand up and tries to make the play no matter what. Like you get a few players who
they'll just back off and wait, look at him, but he'll take the hit.
Which you need that in a big man. Like you need smarts, you need good feet, you need good hands, and you need to be able to get dunked on because you're gonna get dunked on once or more.
Especially
in your
with a
life.
guy with a wingspan that of an albatross. I mean,
that of
the size of your head.
Bull-tail eagle.
Yeah. Quite series for Baines. Other than that, standard, but not outstanding.
But he's up against a tough assignment.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's going to be up against another tough assignments come semi-finals.
Yeah.
He's going to be up against
Embiid if they advance.
He'll just have his way with him.
Well, yeah, I think he's longer than Baines. I mean, the only way you could single coverage defend Embiid is to force him to that spot and force him to run through that post move that he does, and then bring a double over really quickly. And I mean, Stevens is a coach that'll run a scheme like that, which will be interesting to see if they do that. But I think if they play Milwaukee, I can't see them running defensive schemes to stop Embiid, and I don't really see that Delly and Eric Bledsoe really have the ability to stop someone like Ben Simmons.
No, 6'10". He'll just run straight through them. And again, it's not Simmons you have to worry about. It's double teaming Simmons and him passing out to Redick who's open, or Miami probably played the best of any first round team against what Philly had. They just weren't good enough.
Yep.
And obviously Philly getting up 4-1 in that series today. But going on to game 3, still close. I think it was a 6-point affair, 5-point affair. That ended this morning, and
that was game 5.
Game 5, sorry.
So to make it 3-2.
Make it
in
3-2.
The series, yeah.
That's right. It goes back to Milwaukee.
And I think if they can really get their crowd into it, then they'll be tough to beat at home.
Yeah, they'll be tough. It's going to 7 games. It has to.
I don't think they can really win on the road, Milwaukee, unless everything goes right for them.
Yeah.
Because today they looked a little bit disjointed. It didn't look like the same offense. And I mean, the Celtics at home,
same defense run.
The Celtics in that game 4, essentially everyone stepped aside. They tossed Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum the ball and said, just have a crack at it, guys. Just have a crack, put up some shots, and suddenly they started hitting shots and the game got a bit tight. And it was only sort of towards the end where I think they even took the lead, I think, right at the end. And
Giannis got
they let one get away. So it's going to be it'll be a hard series to predict, I think, to the end.
I think it is going 7 games, though.
Yeah, I do think it's probably going to go 7 games. I think Milwaukee will probably win their game at home. And then
a bit of a coin flip.
Yeah, a bit of a, depending on how they play. But we haven't really seen them have success just throwing the ball to Giannis yet.
No. And again, if they're coming up against Philly, if they do get past Boston, they're coming up against Philly. I mean, Philly are coming off a good few days rest.
Yep.
And they destroyed them last game of the season. It was comical. I think it was 35 points. It was a drubbing. So tough to pick this series, but hopefully, we're hoping. Who are you hoping gets through?
Well, I'd like to see Milwaukee play Philly.
Yep. But
at the same time, I think the Celtics are probably the better team to play against Philly to make it a series.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd prefer Delly to play against Simmons. I'd like to see that. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be the best matchup.
No.
And I don't know. In both scenarios, I'd prefer Simmons to play a team and move on.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it doesn't really matter to me.
Doesn't really matter.
Either team I'd like to see play. I think the Celtics would probably have a better chance at beating Philadelphia, but I think the more intriguing matchup and the better series is probably that Bucks series. What about you?
Oh, I would like to see Giannis against Embiid. If they're going to play Giannis at center, that's a matchup you want to have a look at for a few games.
Yeah.
I don't know how Boston are going to deal with Embiid. I don't know how Boston are going to deal with the catch and shoot and they've got the coach to formulate a plan against that. But as you see, Miami's coached very well.
Yeah,
and they played good defense. I mean, most of these guys are on 4 or 5 fouls. They played a hard 5-game series, but Philly just finds a way, and it's kind of funny like that. They just and it's Simmons, it's Embiid, and then it's 3 catch and shoot players in Redick. I mean, Ilyasova to a certain extent, and Bellinelli.
Yep.
So, watch this space, I think.
Yeah, I think either series is going to be really interesting, and I don't know. I don't know if the Bucks have the juice to really pull it out in Boston. I think they might have let one slip in that first game before they'd sort of stumbled onto their better roster. So, and maybe they let one slip a little bit today if they could have just snuck that today. But I don't think they really have the quality to just eke out a win like that. No. I really don't think, But
agreed.
Have you got any more to say about that series?
No, we're going to get on to Jingling Joe versus OKC. The imploding OKC.
Yeah, that was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it?
God, they're woeful. Steven Adams looking like, a fish out of water, followed by Westbrook trying to pass it to anyone who'll give him an assist, and Carmelo Anthony lobbing it from everywhere. And they just look such like a bad... I mean, when Jingling Joe gets in your face and you have a bit of a word to him, something's wrong because he's the most unassuming
he's just
basketballer.
I would look at Joe Ingles as Paul George and just think, who are you? Sorry, I'm not. I don't care who you are, and I wouldn't get rattled by it. But he just seems to be rattled by it. I mean, the first game, he absolutely lit Joe Ingles up, like just destroyed him. Ingles couldn't guard him, couldn't work it out, and it took Quinn Snyder changing the way they played a little bit to actually fix that. And allow to Joe Ingles to actually stay on the court against Paul George. And it's almost as though Paul George, instead of adjusting himself, he's just been sucked right into it.
Yeah, he hasn't. Well, I mean,
he had that great game in the first game. He went nuclear.
Shooting 75%.
Yeah.
From the arc and in the field, but since then, they're not shooting well, but they just get to the fourth quarter and they've got no answer for the defense.
Yep.
And as soon as the Jazz pull on any kind of run, they just look defeated. Like their body language looks like you guys aren't getting paid. You're getting paid $25 million a season each. Have some fighting spirit. And Westbrook has been, pretty woeful games
by his own
2,
standards.
3, and 4.
For
by
sure.
his own standards, he's still scoring decent amounts, but his assist counts down. They're not moving the ball. They're running it up and hoiking it and hoping they get a rebound. Yep. Steven Adams has not been standing under the rim, and he's getting.
Well, he's not rebounding. Look, his rebounding has been totally limited in this series by Gobert.
Gobert's got so much lank on him, but he's a big unit. He's using his body weight, and he's not. And
the other aspect to that is, in every game, he's tried to do that and essentially picked up some silly fouls and had to sit.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because whenever he's on the court, he always has the best plus minus. So their team with Adams in it when he's on the court is probably at best as good as OKC. OKC's as good as the Jazz.
Yes.
But as soon as he comes off the court, there's no other player to guard Gobert, and their schemes seem to be, I'll just let Rubio shoot from wherever, because he took 16 shots in the first game, and I mentioned that in the first episode. He was
just working it in, but
in that second game, he took a similar amount of shots, but
he's going to have a night where he hits. He's not a bad point guard.
He's good for one night, and instead of looking at Rubio and saying, "Oh well, even if you're starting to heat up, we'll let you just keep shooting." No, you're going to go cold anyway. You get right on him. You go, "Okay, we're not going to let you heat up now." And instead, they just stepped off him in that second quarter in game 3, and he torched them.
Yeah, he did.
And it's a double whammy because it demoralizes you double because it's a guy you're leaving, and you totally have to change your scheme. And you don't want to leave a player that you're purposefully leaving open to shoot, to keep shooting when he's hitting shots.
They're not rushing the day, and they haven't played an aggressive style of. They get niggly, but they haven't played a smart, aggressive defense.
No. It's almost a silly. They're getting sucked into the aggression. They're losing their minds and making silly fouls. And I mean, Gobert's gotten Steven Adams at the rim, got him up in the air, and bought some cheap fouls off him a fair few times.
He's had to sit down for extended minutes.
Yeah,
Qs 2 and 3. I mean, Westbrook had to sit out pretty much half the game. Game 4, he was in foul trouble very early on.
Yeah.
And,
even that wasn't away from the ball foul too, where he got fouled. He fouled Rubio. It was off an he'd made a layup, and off an inbounds, he fouled Rubio in a stupid way while he was already on 2 fouls. And I mean, you can't. It's the playoff basketball. You can't be losing your head like that when you're a star and you're the main driver of this team.
That's ego.
Yeah,
that's Westbrook ego on the court, and Donovan Mitchell just puts him to the sword.
I think Mitchell would struggle against a better defender. I don't think Westbrook's a bad defender, but
it's not his priority. It's not the glory.
No, it's not. I want to lock in and stop this player. It's I'm just doing what I can do to stop this guy, and if he goes through, then whatever. Because I'll do it at the other end to make up for it. But in playoff basketball, I mean, you've got to tighten up every aspect of your game and make sure it's 100%.
Well, the Jazz have slowed the game down quite considerably, which suits their style because they're not a catch and shoot team. They're a set play team.
Yeah,
move off the pick and roll, and get Donovan Mitchell on the layup or. Jingling Joe Ingles from outside, and when he hit 3, he was none. I think he was none from 4.
To start the game.
And then hits 3 in a row, and the last one over George, and the heads went down, and the game was over after that. For me, the game was over.
But I think their coaching adjustments that Utah made in that game 2 carried over to game 3, and instead of Donovan sort of making the adjustment. They started to play a little bit harder, OKC, but you could sort of tell the scheming that they were trying to run just wasn't working, and there was no plan B but to try and play a bit harder, which resulted in them just fouling a lot.
Yeah, but it was also smart of the Jazz to move fringe players or bench players in hard defense on someone like a Westbrook or Crowder. I think fouled quite heavily early on and was taken out of the game. So it's smart to move players that you potentially can put a bit of harder D on and foul out early.
Yep.
And it left Rubio and Ingles and Gobert and guys like these to be more of that offensive value to the team. Very, very smart coaching. But again, Jingling Joe, 20 points, really that game 4, he almost won that game for them. There's 3 threes in a row, single-handedly demoralized George, and he shot woefully after that. And Carmelo Anthony,
I think he went the final 9 minutes of that fourth quarter without scoring at all.
So there was no pick and roll. There was no set play. It was Huyken. It was just who can ISO jump this.
And I watch Utah, and you watch the way they run their sets. Nobody moves without a purpose. No. So the ball handler moves, the screeners move, and everyone else moves with it. It's all in one action. Whereas you look at OKC, Westbrook moves the ball, somebody else will move to stand somewhere, and the screener will screen someone. And what he's doing is screening Westbrook into more players instead of everybody sort of spaces the floor and allows Westbrook to sort of drive at the rim. And the other aspect is they're driving into Gobert. And they don't want to shoot over Gobert. Like, they're completely scared of Rudy Gobert. And
he's so long.
But, I mean, you've just got to go into him. That's the other part
Try and foul him out early. But
that's what OKC are doing that to Adams. And OKC are not doing it to
Gobert.
It's
not doing it to Adams at all.
And it's crazy because Donovan Mitchell is driving on Adams. He's seeing Adams at the rim and just trying to finish through him. I mean, OKC and Westbrook really need to just go at this guy. There's 2 ways you can get Gobert off the floor, and that's get him to foul you at the rim, which is one. And the other way is to run action that brings him up to the 3-point line and then just cook him off the dribble. But they're not even doing that. And
No.
I thought that was just really strange because that should be Westbrook's bread and butter. That's his bread and butter is, running a pick and roll, completely beating the screener and his man and beating everyone to the basket.
But again, that's really where the Jazz have played well, is they've slowed down the pace.
Definitely.
They're not letting Westbrook take off in transition.
No. And they're one of the best teams that does that.
Yeah, they'll foul early into the play just to
Yep.
stop that and force them to shoot outside. And again, it's smart tactics. It's good pace, and it suits their style of catch and
Yep.
shoot, or Mitchell running up, driving it over someone, or
Yep.
that
And I
little
mean-
floater, that single arm floater driver. He gets around everyone and gets it in.
Yeah, the other aspect of Rubio is that he's not a selfish scoring player. So OKC choosing to leave him open to try and shoot just allows more play to develop off the back of the fact that they're leaving him open. So he'll use a screen, he'll come off the screen, he'll sort of fake to shoot or finish his dribble, and two other guys are running through to make a cut. And it's Joe Ingles or Donovan Mitchell. So Joe Ingles, will run another screen and pass it out. And then he's either got Rubio again, or it's Donovan Mitchell who he'll just give the ball to and he'll just go straight at the hoop, while everyone's sort of gotten out of his way trying to body up on the action that Utah are running. So there's so many aspects of that series where you'd expect
quality players that OKC has to understand
Yeah.
what's happening to them and turn or manipulate. But again,
Yeah.
is that team run by the coach or is it run by Westbrook?
Well, I'd like to think as professional basketball players, they could understand it in their own playing of the game, what's sort of happening. But that's the aspect where that's not happening either.
Or a champions team.
Yeah, that's true.
You get really. I mean, I don't think Adams has too much of an ego, but you've got three egos in George, Anthony, and Westbrook, and
Yep.
you can throw Durant in that team, you can throw Harden in that team, and yet they still can't pull a championship out. So what does that say? Colin Cowherd does not like Westbrook or rate him as a player. At all.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that think that about Westbrook, and I mean,
he's a great player. Isolated, he's a fantastic player, but in a team environment, he's not a good floor general. I don't think.
I don't think he's a good floor general either. But if you would put him in a scenario with Paul George and Carmelo, and those three were meant to identify on the defensive end what action was happening and take action to play against it, I really don't think that combination of players can do that. They don't understand how to limit Utah at the same time as playing their own type of basketball.
Well, they've never been defensive players.
No.
Paul George isn't a defensive player.
Well, he can be, but in isolation for himself.
Yeah. He can mark a guy one-on-one, but Anthony's never been a really good defensive player.
And high IQ defense. I mean, there's using your body. I think Joe Ingles is not he doesn't have quick feet. He's not an excessively large body, but he uses his body like he knows how to use his own body and his feet. So he was doing a lot of hedging and a lot of trying to follow where Paul George was in the first two games. And instead, the rest of the team has moved around to allow him to not have to isolate on Paul George in those scenarios.
Yeah.
So he can use his feet and switch more, and use his body to get into Paul George more, which Paul George doesn't seem to like at all.
He's reading where Paul George is going to be a lot better as well. He's moving into the run and not allowing him to to pull up the jumper, or if he's shooting, he's shooting over a lanky arm. He's not shooting in the clear as much as he was game 1 and 2.
And the way Utah spaces their team, more movement from OKC play, like running more action that actually moves the Utah defense, would open up the floor more for Westbrook, but he doesn't seem to be running action that can open up the floor, even from a fundamental standpoint. He's not running action that opens up the floor for himself.
No.
And he's asking for a screener. A screener's coming. He's running past the screener, and then there's just more players in the middle to run into.
The only thing you do is pull up and jump, and he's 35 to 40% from the pull-up.
And his mid-range has not been very good in this series. And if you're Utah, you want him taking as many mid-range shots. Like all you want Westbrook doing is coming off a screen and taking a shot. Like you'll take that every day of the week. And there are going to be a game or two where he lights up and he gets a lot of points. But ultimately, it's a similar game to Rubio, where if you leave him open, he might have 1 or 2 games where he scores, and
he might have it. But again, Rubio is one of those guys, and I think that Carmelo Anthony was just trash.
Yeah.
Rubio, he realizes that his shot's not on and will look for Mitchell or Ingles or Gobert or Crowder. I mean, Crowder had a bad game as well, but that he'll look for these guys. Whereas, it's something like, I think Carmelo Anthony, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook are each averaging like 4.1 in points in quarter 4. This whole series, which is you're not going to win a game.
Nah.
Scoring 16 points. I mean, I think Raymond Felton's had a better game than Westbrook. At least he's run the offense with a bit of vigor and is getting into open positions, and he's speeding up a lot of the Jazz's play because they know when he's on the court, they can play a little bit quicker. And when Westbrook's on the court, they want to slow it right down. But, he's moving the ball a lot more. But again, he's not an A-grade point guard. And you really do want Westbrook as much as you can on the field. But there's also some controversy. Game 4 is that, Westbrook potentially in the line for suspension. Game 5.
Yeah, I didn't actually see the end of that game.
Yeah, so that bit of a scuffle, and a few words said. A lot of technicals given that game. It was a very scrappy game in terms of that.
It was a really early tech. Paul George was taking a side inbounds, and Joe Ingles got right up in his face, and Paul George just shoved him right in front of the ref. Like a stupid play.
But again, none of these plays have been smart. They're not have been.
It's almost as though they're plays that they've let the emotions get the better of them. I mean, everyone does that. Everyone does stupid things in the heat of the moment. But I mean, if you're going to win, if you're going to beat another team, you need to keep that in check and use it. I mean, you look at Simmons in that Heat series. There's 3 or 4 times in all of those games where they were right in his face, getting right into him, and he just wasn't having a single bar of it.
No, he's for his age, he's not got a hot head at all.
He's almost the opposite of a young person for his age, in that he uses his emotions to completely switch off and negate the fact that people are trying to chip at him, which, if you want a young player to come through these days and make it big, they need a temperament that's like that. Like, he's playing well above his own years. And I mean, how long has Paul George been in the league? He's a 9-year player. He's been in the league 9 years. I mean, he's got to know better than that. And especially, it's Joe Ingles too. Like,
it's ego. It's the ego. It's the we should be winning ego. Yeah. And why aren't we winning ego? How can this young Jazz team featuring some dude from Australia be, killing us essentially?
Yeah.
But anyway,
so what do you reckon for the rest of that series? Do you reckon the Jazz is going to pretty much close it out?
I'd like to say, but depending on whether Westbrook's back for Game 5 or if he gets suspended, look, I think they might pull out Game 5. OKC. I mean, something's got to change. You can't have 3 bad games in a row. Something's got to change.
And I still think those 3, Paul George has had his big game. I think Carmelo Anthony's probably due one big game, and I think Westbrook's still probably due one big game. So they're going to have to play pretty well to pull it out. I think if they can sort of, run their offense in ways that limits the way that Utah keep the pace quite slow and methodic, then obviously they're going to limit the way Utah can restrict them as in their offense. But the other problem is that the slower the game seems to be for Utah, the more they can sort of limit OKC trying to speed the game up. Because they've done it a couple times in the first quarter. They seem to get a bit of a run on and seem to get a bit of a roll on, but then eventually it just catches up to them, sort of like a freight train.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that next game, I think Game 5 in OKC is tomorrow.
Yes.
And I think Utah can close it out if they win that. I'd like to think OKC can pull that one out at least.
I think they will pull tomorrow out. I mean, they've got to come together in some way, shape, or form. But I think the Jazz win the series.
I think the Jazz probably at home win that series. And we've seen so many series where the home team has had such a big advantage this season.
It's been quite bizarre. I mean, I would have written off the Wizards game 2.
Yep.
And yet they come back and John Wall has a blinder.
Mm.
And I think Bill fouled out quite early into the game 4, and they still won that game. So it's hard to call some of these games.
The only one that hasn't really had a good time of it was Portland.
Good old Portland.
And then Miami, which brings us on to Ben Simmons.
Well, hold on, we got to talk about Dante Exum there.
Oh, sorry, mate, we
missed Exum, but
a little bit ahead of myself.
Exum, look, very few minutes. Not bad backup point guard at this stage. It's going to be interesting to see what the Jazz do with him next season. He's obviously had a woeful run of injuries. He hasn't really lived up to his performance. Does he get picked up by another team? What can he command? I think the Jazz got an option next year on him.
Option. I'm pretty sure they do.
No, they do.
Yeah.
But look, he's there. He's giving good minutes.
I think he's a useful piece. The biggest problem in this series is he comes off the bench and straight away Raymond Felton, if he's on the floor, goes straight at him.
He's a pest, and he's a good little guard.
Is that Felton?
Yeah. And
I think Exum's body, he doesn't really have a guard's body. I think he's got more of a forward's body. And he's turning the ball over just a little bit too much for him to be impactful. I mean, his
assist to turnover ratio is pretty woeful, to be honest. But again, it's one of those things. Is when you're given a minute or 2 minutes at the end of each quarter, what you can't settle into a rhythm. What kind of impact are you having? He's not pulling up and jumping. He's going for the layup, and a lot of the time he's getting his pocket pinched, and that's the nature. They've kind of worked him out this series.
Yeah. They're getting into him as he dribbles up the court too, and they're picking him up really high in their set, which is that's obviously, if you're a smaller guard, that's the way you get into a player like that. He's 6'6", and he's long too, and he's got long legs.
Arms, yeah.
So if you're going to go at a player like that, that's exactly how you go at them. And you couple that with that's a release valve for OKC. Yeah. Rubio's come off the court. Our next mission to try and shut this team down is to go straight at that player like that. So, I mean, I don't think he's going to get too many minutes in the next couple of games coming off the bench. No. I don't know if he can be that viable in this series as a sort of backup player. But the other part is that Utah's rotation doesn't seem to get taken off the floor.
No, there's always one or two.
Yeah, there seems to be no player there that we're going to go at this player and take him off the floor, basically.
No.
So they're allowed to run their rotations exactly how they want to run them, which is, again, another aspect of that series that is away from OKC's favour. So, but I think they probably close it out in the next game. If OKC can get some sort of roll on and win that game 5, then maybe they fluke one out in Utah, but I can't see them losing I can't see Utah losing at home.
Yeah, I don't see Utah losing home. Before the series started, I would have thought OKC would have pulled this out quite comfortably, just with the talent and the rising in the playoffs, but I have been very much mistaken, and the Jazz look like a well-oiled machine, very much like Philly, a young team that's hungry and willing to work in unison and play well, and they've got a good coach in that. So, now we can move on to Ben Simmons and Philly, obviously winning the series 4-1, and I mean, Ben playing the way Ben does, just pretty much owning the court, and you can't say things more highly about what he does and what he adds to Philadelphia. But I mean, Philadelphia is a great team. Brett Brown's got that team, in a position where they're number one defensive, number one in passes, number one in assists, and Miami played really well. Like they had the exact right play against Philly, and they still couldn't put the series out.
Yeah, I think they're kind of lacking. They're lacking that player to guard Embiid, which if you're going into a series and that's your first problem, we need someone to guard Embiid. I wouldn't say Whiteside's the guy to do that.
No, I don't think Hassan Whiteside is worth his value, to be honest with you.
I don't think in the playoffs he's someone that you can use as I think you could get away with having him if your opposition doesn't have a skill and big man as skilled as Embiid.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I just don't think he has the temperament. He has the the maturity to sort of guard a player with that many weapons and that many skills, and the ability to shoot from the outside as well as post up and catch and put the ball on the floor and score.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things. If with having Embiid, a decent perimeter shooter, and can shoot a jump shot from 20 or 16 or something like that, then you take Hassan Whiteside out of the paint, and you're left with a big Philly team like Simmons, like Saric, even Ilyasova on the offensive rebound. You take your rebound option out because Embiid's on the arc, and you've got Ilyasova and you've got all these players in the middle who can either tip it in or take the offensive rebound. And we saw it more times, probably in Game 4, the Ilyasova tip-in, when Whiteside's off because he's been fouled out, or when he's on and Embiid's taking him to the perimeter. And that's the skill and the prowess of Embiid, is that you can't just guard him from the paint. You have to guard. You have to go to him. And that opens up more points in the paint than I think any other center would potentially.
And the weapons that Miami had to try and negate Embiid in the series. I mean, he only played through games 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
They
didn't shoot particularly well the whole series,
and they didn't show that they had the ability to exploit that Philly team without Embiid in the first 2 games. I thought the first 2 games were quite close, but Philly still showed that they had the weapons if the shots were falling to win every game in that series.
Well, Game 1, Miami didn't play the Philly game. They let Philly shoot from the perimeter, and Bellinelli and Redick just pretty much had their way, same as Ilyasova. But Game 2, they came out and they really took it to them, and I think that's why they brought Embiid back, because they knew that was the weapon that was always going to get them over Game 3, 4, and 5. And, Wade doesn't shoot 11 from 16 Game 2. Miami don't win.
Yeah.
And Olenek had a pretty good Game 2 as well, and Justice Winslow, and they played a good style, but again, they didn't have the legs, and they didn't have the shooters. They let Winslow pretty much shoot from outside, and
they left Justice Winslow to shoot. And if you need to recognize as a player, like we were saying against OKC, you need to recognize if a team's doing that to you and try and hit them with your weapons. You don't just keep shooting if you go cold. You try and make something else happen. And I mean, even that as a strategy, it has a depreciating value if you're not playing comfortably. You're not playing the way you want to play. You're not playing the speed you want to play, the lineups that you want to play, and your players aren't doing what they need to do to stop the opposition. And scoring-wise, I don't think Miami had the weapons to really hurt them.
They didn't have the weapons, but again, the plays that they could have used as a weapon got into foul trouble way too early because of the style and the scrappiness of the flow of the game. So if you're going to guard Embiid or Simmons hard, be prepared to sit players out that you may not want to sit out. I think Richardson had to sit out pretty much, and he was shooting well all series, and he was pretty much out most of the game. No teeth, fouled out pretty.
Tyler Johnson,
No teeth, Tyler Johnson fouled out pretty early into the fourth.
He had that hand injury.
But he was still shooting well. I think he had 17 points this game. You know, fouled out in the fourth. That's the kind of guy that you want to give the ball to. 5 minutes to go. There's 8 points in it. You've just had a run, and there's no one to hit. There's no one hit from beyond the arc. Yeah. Ellington, they didn't use Ellington enough.
Yeah.
I thought that he played very little minutes off the bed. Again, he's not a good defensive option, and I think that's what they.
Well, especially Philly have the bigger guards. I mean, Sharich, you know, when he plays power forward, really he's playing as a guard. I mean, when you have Simmons, he's playing as a point guard, but he's got the body of a forward. So you're not necessarily running a traditional set of players with Simmons at the point guard running action like a point guard. You're almost running action for the same sized players who can shoot. They can put the ball on the floor. They can also go down low and score. So you're not. You have guards on the court, but when you've got guards that are the size of forwards, I think that's kind of why Covington didn't play all that well, didn't shoot all that well in this series because...
He shot well this game. He had a couple open. I think he hit 3 threes this game. Yeah. He's a good defender. That's where his prowess is. He's a fantastic defender. He hasn't defended very well this series, but throughout the season...
I thought he defended quite well. And
this game, I don't think he'd played... I think he turned the ball over way too much games 1, 2, 3, and 4. This game, he defended well. He shot okay. He
fouled a little bit too much.
But that's his style. Yeah. I mean, he's always the one that's going to get in foul trouble with Philly.
When Miami, you know, run their defensive scheme, you want the ball in Covington's hands and you want someone right up in Covington's face because that's the way you guard their only guard that isn't the size of a forward.
Yeah.
And that's not JJ Redick as well. I mean, Redick doesn't just spot up and shoot. Redick will come off action and shoot.
Yes.
And I don't
he'll fight around screens and he'll get in the clear and he'll knock down too. And the problem I think with someone like an Ellington is that they won't fight around the screen to take 18-foot jump shot.
Yeah.
They'll always try and go for the 3. Whereas Redick will fight around the screen just to get the 2. Same as Bellinelli. And I think that adds value into the depth of the team because it is a high percentage shot, but not by much, but you're scoring more regularly.
Yeah.
And guys are more willing to leave you open inside as well. But
we haven't even talked about Bellinelli. I mean, he was shooting with no conscience, and that's just the kind of guy you need in the playoffs. When things are tight, you want someone who's just, boss, I'll take a shot. Yep, no worries. I'll take a shot. I don't care how bad it is, how guarded I am. I'll just take a shot. And if, you know, he's the kind of guy that can make those shots.
He's hitting at 40%. It's still high. But Ben Simmons?
Yeah. It's just quality. I just can't believe how much he's grown this season. It's just been absolutely meteoric.
Yes. He's LeBron-like. Just the passing... The core presence.
Even the way he conducts himself. Even
Dragic hit him in the head and he just walked away.
Yeah, he just walked away. It's the Aussie in him.
Yeah.
It's the calm Aussie. It's the boy that lives on an island.
Definitely not a tall poppy. He's got a level head. He's wisdom beyond his years, and he reads the game.
Yeah.
For a guy who only played a year of college basketball and had a year out, he just reads the game
incredibly well. That baseline pass he had for Covington. I mean, Covington still had to stretch and really make it to get to the ball, but the pass was so perfect that all he had to do was pick it up and just put it in the hoop. It was amazing. I mean, if you're what is he, 21? I think he's turning 22 at the end of this year.
Yeah.
And for already how complete of a player he is.
If he develops any kind of a shot, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I think he's going to go pretty close to being a Hall of Famer. But the other thing, every year he'll need to develop another aspect of his game. I mean...
Something that he's talked about is he needs to develop his defense a bit more.
Yep.
Again, he's a 6'10" point guard guarding 6'3" guys. I mean, how much better defense do you need? You let them drive to the rim. You're the general. You don't really want to foul out early or go into foul trouble. So you probably let these guys have an earlier basket or a couple of freebies there because you're playing a lot of minutes. And so I don't know how much more he can develop as a defender or needs to develop as a defender. But that's something he said he wants to work on a lot.
Well, I think he moves his feet well. I think he reads the game well. He's strong, and
he's quick. He's as quick as someone who's 6'2". Like, it's ridiculous.
And he knows how to use his body, even though it's oversized. I mean, if you compare him with Exum, and you look at Exum's body, you can tell that Exum can't really use his body the way Simmons does. Like, Simmons has a more compact body, and he's able to use it a lot better than Exum.
He looks like a proportionate... He looks like he's 6'2" in proportion, but he's 6'10".
Yeah.
Whereas Exum looks like his arms could scratch his ankles when he stands.
Yeah, and he's got long legs.
He's got really long levers.
Big strides. And the only other player recently I've sort of looked at is LeBron James, where the type of compact athlete that he is, at the size that he is, has allowed him to develop his game in every aspect, whether it be passing, defense, reading plays and making plays and going to the basket and scoring. I mean, he had that dunk in the third quarter where he just ran through, like, he took it off the screen, and instead of handing it off to the ball screener, he ran straight through and just dunked it pretty much over everyone before they could even see. Before they even knew the play was happening, he was at the rim putting it through. And I mean...
that was going forward with about 3 minutes to go as well. I mean, they got...
Oh, that dunk at the end of that was insane.
Just run through everyone. Everyone's just looking at everyone going, what do we do?
And I mean, that kind of killer instinct, you can't teach that. I mean, you can teach somebody to try that on, but you can't teach somebody to know when to put the foot down and just go to the hoop. And if you've got the physical gifts that he's got, I mean, the world's his oyster. I mean, all he needs to do is develop his passing, develop his post scoring a little bit. I mean, none of it really needs that much work, but if he works on all these aspects, then he's only going to get better.
I haven't seen a team that's worked him out yet. And I don't know if that'll come in time or if it'll come in the sense of another physical body that's drafted the same size at the same position he is. But I have yet to see a team... I think Miami did a better job than most teams, but I've yet to see a team that...
I don't think Miami had the weapon really to guard him. It was
Dragic's
Wade.
too small. Wade's too old.
Dragic, who is a pass first sort of attacking point guard.
He's a good point guard.
He is. And the problem was he didn't have any other options. Like, Philly's got such a good team and such a good defensive unit that he couldn't get off the ball and get the ball back to put it in the hoop. And that was one of their biggest problems. But I mean, Simmons, if he develops any kind of... going back to, I think, November, December last year, some teams started to realize, we just keep him from the basket and, we negate pretty much anything he can do because he can't shoot. So instead of sort of letting him have shots, players will just stand near him and just go, you can't dribble. Yeah. What can you do now? You can just pretty much pass the ball, stand around and hope you get the ball back. And it wasn't until... probably February, March, where you started to see him work that out. Like, he worked it out that, if I just cook someone off the dribble who's standing near me, and I've got pretty much either a free run to the hoop, or I just toss it out to somebody.
Yeah.
And suddenly, if your team is playing like that, it just opens up so many more options for you to run your offense through. Like, whether he passes, whether he scores, whether you're throwing it to Embiid to score in the post, you're just opening up all your options. And I think it was that made him grow as a player, because I do think he went through a little bit of a slump at the back end of last year.
He did go through a bit of a slump. I mean, statistically, he was down on assists. He wasn't scoring a lot. But again, he just took his game to the next level. And a lot of the other players came out of Christmas break with a bit more zest. Redick started hitting, Saric started really dropping it. Yeah. Embiid played well, and he was playing off guys, but nothing can be said for the signing of Bellinelli and Ilyasova.
Yeah, I think that
alone has given them
that's transformed their franchise, basically, Because I think they were a 500 team.
They were a 500 team, and they went to a 620, 630 based on the back of those two players.
A huge run at the back end of last season, and I think... next series will be interesting, whether they play the Bucks or the Celtics.
I don't see either team containing them.
I don't think so either. I just don't think the Bucks have the weapons, and I don't think the Celtics have the weapons either, you know?
And if they get through the last, they'll be playing either the Cavs or the Raptors. And that would be an interesting series. I think LeBron will be so tired. And it really is if he's on or not. If he's on, they get close. If he's not, they don't win.
Well, they beat them pretty handily in their regular season.
Yes. Oh, they beat them by 2.
Oh, in that big comeback game.
Yeah.
But they put some pretty handy leads on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the regular season, you can be forgiven for just switching off a little bit and letting teams sort of run up the score.
I don't see the Cavs having the defensive mindset to take Philly to task.
So if they make the Eastern Conference Finals, it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
It will. Well, we've been at this, an hour now?
Yeah, about an hour. So
that pretty much wraps up the games this week. I think now with Philly going through, at this point we're 1:13 left in the third, and San Antonio are down 11 points. So it could be a wrap for Patty Mills in the next 20 minutes, which would be a bit of a shame, but something that was not out of the blue.
Yeah.
So we'll be back early next week to wrap up all the game.
Yeah, from the first round of the action.
First round, and post that we'll be doing a Patty Mills season wrap as well.
If they go out, then we'll do a season review for Patty Mills, and we'll try and get that out there as well.
Yeah. All
right. Say goodbye.
Take it easy.
See
ya.
Thanks again for listening, guys. Just to let you know, we've started up a Twitter and Facebook page at AusNBA Takeover. We're currently looking at getting our stuff onto iTunes and possibly putting it onto other networks. But if you want to contact us, you can find us on Twitter at AusNBA Takeover. Thanks again.